In youth soccer, the primary approach to developing ball technical skills is via the analytical method. The analytical method is limited, since the path of the ball and movement of the player is predetermined. But also, we can only work on one possible variable of a given ball technical skill. Let's discuss the concept of passing the ball in the game of soccer. We can use different body surfaces to pass the ball, the speed of the pass, aerial or ground passes, short or long distance, and we have not taken into account the context of the situation in which the player is involved. So how can we create training activities that develop players that feel comfortable with the ball? How can we develop players that are confident to execute technical skills properly? How can we create a training program that develop elite soccer players that can master technical skills with the ball? When we talk about developing technical skills, we are talking about developing ball mastery. Without it, our players can never perform at the elite level. So let's dig deeper and explore how we achieve this. We can break down the game into two major phases, the attacking and defending phases. During the defensive phase, players are not in possession of the ball and are limited to defensive functions. During the attacking phase of the game, we can break it into two sub-phases. The player is in possession of the ball or teammate is in possession of the ball. When a teammate is in possession of the ball, the player is limited to supporting roles within the game. So we are only concerned when the player is in possession of the ball, which occurs during the offensive phase of the game. And during the offensive phase, we have tactical behaviors we want our team to carry out, and hence the player in possession of the ball must make tactical decisions with the ball. As we can see by the prior analysis, carrying out technical skills is not simply a physical activity, but a skill that requires a cognitive process attached to it. Technique goes through three phases. The first phase is a perception process prior to receiving the ball, where the player analyzes or becomes aware of his surrounding. Concentration, broad external. This is followed by the decision process, where the player now determines what he is going to do with the ball. This phase is highly influenced by the prior phase, as what the player perceives will determine his course of action. The decision the player takes will go hand in hand with the tactical objectives we have established with the team. Concentration, narrow internal. The last process is the actual or physical execution of the decision taken. This is what most people view as technique, but we can conclude that technique is much more than just a biomechanical movement, since we know that it is a tactical phase that involves the soccer ball. Concentration, narrow external. Let us dig deeper into these phases and put aside once and for all the idea that technique is an isolated event in soccer. Perception is both physical and psychological. Eyes are physical organs in our body, and the health status of these can have an influence of what is perceived on the field. But we know that not everyone can perceive his surrounding equally. Some players are more aware of their surroundings than others, and therefore have higher perception skills. Seeing is one thing, perceiving another. Spatial temporal perception. The decision process is highly influenced by psychological and physical states. As the ball approaches the player, he has to decide what he is going to do with it. Will he pass, run with it, dribble? And what direction should he take? This decision process is also influenced by the player's level of confidence and his fitness state during a game. We continue seeing that it is not so simple to separate technique from the other components of the game. The execution process is a biomechanical action carried out by the central nervous system and musculoskeletal system. This physical action is what most define as a technical skills. But from the prior analysis, we can see that technique is a combination of the physical, tactical, and psychological components, not just an isolated action with the ball. Now, we need to understand how to use each one of the coaching methods in order to develop highly skilled technical players. Each of the coaching methods has a different impact on the three phases of technique. Using the correct method to manipulate these phases will increase the transferability of technical skills to match conditions. PDE of Global Method. Perception. With the global method, it is maximum, since the situations and actions that are going to appear are unpredictable. It is necessary to perceive correctly and quickly all the continuous variations produced by the ball, teammates, and opponents. Decision. Maximum with global exercises, since each time that stimuli are perceived that modify game situations, It is necessary to analyze them and decide how the new situations can be resolved. Execution. Medium with global exercises. Given the characteristics of this method, more actions are realized that are proper of the game itself. PDE of Analytical Method. Perception. With the analytical method, it is minimal, given that stable situations are presented that does not require great intensity of this mechanism. Decision. None with the analytical method, since all the actions are predictable and known by the player before initiating the action. Execution. Maximum in analytical exercises, since an elevated number of repetitions are obtained. And now let's see how the conditional method impacts each of these phases. Perception. With the conditional method, it is maximum, since this is a modified version of the game. Decision. With the conditional method is super maximum, as the game has variables that the players must be constantly aware of. Execution. Maximum, as the conditions imposed will make the desired technical behavior appear constantly during the game. When we design training activities, it's a good idea to develop exercises using all three methods, as this will make it easier to incorporate them into the training session. For example, if we want to develop the ability for players to dribble the ball, we can start with an analytical exercise. In this exercise, players will dribble around the cone using different surfaces of the foot. We can then progress by having the players do a more sharp turn. We can execute this activity using only the right or left foot. How we do the change of direction, with the inside of the foot, outside of the foot, or drag the ball. Be creative and have as many progressions as possible. Do not allow the activity to be boring. At this point, we are only working on the execution of the skill, so we need to develop the perception and decision phases also. Now let's move on to a conditional exercise, where to score a goal, the player must dribble over the line, beating the defender inside the defensive zone. With this activity, we are also working on 1v1, a key skill that our young players must develop. But this activity brings in a number of challenges that players need to resolve, posed by the defender in the scoring zone. Finally, we move on to a game of soccer, a 4v4. We can shrink or enlarge the field size during the practice in order to increase or decrease the challenge. Given the small grid size, players will have to constantly dribble the ball in order to shield it and maintain possession. Notice that the combination of all coaching methods is what creates the proper environment to develop a skill, not just one exercise.